On what just happened, we're following the story, of course, here on RT. This is a developing story. We are joined now by Marcus Papadopoulos, editor of Politics First magazine. Excuse me. Thank you very much, sir, for joining me here on RT. Now, the bomb went off near a school and a kindergarten. So do you think children may have been targeted, as well as the Prime Minister, of course?
Well, before I answer your question, I'd like to express my condolences to the victims of the terrorist bombing in Damascus today, and to condemn it outright. What we have to remember is that these sort of terrorist acts which occur today, they occur in Damascus, in Syria, in various Syrian cities on a daily basis, and they rarely get reported by Western media. And unfortunately, what happened today is no different to the vile bombing in Boston from a few weeks ago. But unfortunately, Western politicians and Western journalists, they're turning a blind eye to the actions today because they're being carried out by the West's proxies, i.e. the various militant Islamist groups which comprise the so-called Free Syrian Army. But in regard to your question, I would probably say that the target was the Syrian Prime Minister, and the fact that civilians have been killed as well demonstrates just what the heinous nature of the Free Syrian Army, that they're quite prepared to kill not only the Syrian Prime Minister, but also fellow Syrian civilians. And this is something which is just completely ignored in the West and is no different to the terrorist bombings that occurred in London in July 2005.
Well, of course, there's been a lot of speculation that Western money has been ending up in terrorist hands. So do you think this attack is evidence of that?
Well, let's just have a look at the so-called Free Syrian Army. They've made it, the various groups that make up the Free Syrian Army have made it very clear that their ideology is Islamism. They wish to replace the secular progressive state, that is Syria, with Sharia law. And many of these groups are linked to Al-Qaeda, for example, the Al-Nusra Front. So the fact that Western governments, led by and principally by the United States, has been sending hundreds of millions of dollars to the so-called Free Syrian Army, really you have to sort of think about it yourself. Is the money going to end up in the hands of terrorists? Yes, it is, without any doubt whatsoever. And anyone that plants a bomb in a civilian area, anyone that sends a suicide bomber to kill civilians, to maim civilians, that constitutes a terrorist. That and his or her act constitutes terrorism. And Western governments need to condemn the attack today in Damascus and to condemn all subsequent terrorist attacks. Terrorism is terrorism is terrorism.
Well, you know, the international community lately has been focused on the allegations of Assad troops using chemical weapons. Do you think this blast will divert their attention from this for a while?
I don't believe it will. The only reason why this has gained publicity today is because the target, the primary target of the terrorist act today was the Syrian Prime Minister, and the secondary target was to install terror amongst Syrian civilians in the effort to topple the Syrian government. But no, I don't think it will. I think the West has an agenda, as it had in Afghanistan in the 1980s when it supported the Mujahideen, including bin Laden. It had an agenda in the former Yugoslavia. It had an agenda in Iraq, in Libya, and it has an agenda today. It's an awkward. It will be an awkward day for Western governments, principally the United States, but it certainly won't divert its attention away from the alleged use of chemical weapons in Syria.
Well, you know, earlier we heard positions of Obama and Cameron on this, and Washington specifically views the use of chemical weapons in Syria as crossing the red line. So do you think these allegations will lead to anything big? Very briefly, if you could.
Well, I think the international community is very wary when it comes to the United States government claiming massacres have occurred here, claiming that chemical weapons use has occurred. Remember, this is the same government that claimed 100,000 Kosovan Albanians had been murdered by Serb forces in 1999. This is the same government that claimed that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction and it could deploy them in 45 minutes. This is the same government that alleged that thousands upon thousands of Libyan civilians were being massacred by Colonel Gaddafi's forces 2 years ago. I don't think it will lead to military intervention. I suspect it will be used to justify further support for the militant groups, but that's it.
All right. Well, Mr. Marcus Papadopoulos, editor of Politics First magazine, thanks so much for sharing your views with us here on RT.
Thank you.
Well, also to